Aloha Planet citizens, this is Cindie. Welcome to EcoVentures. You can find EcoVentures Radio wherever you find your podcasts. Good morning, everyone. This is Cindie, and I am here today with Jackie Garrick. She is on the board of Whistleblowers of America, and she's been involved with helping whistleblowers. She's got her own interest in that, and I'll let her tell us the story. Thank you, Jackie, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this in your new format.
Oh, great. So EcoVentures Radio started about 3 years ago. And what I do is I highlight bright spots, people or organizations that help us live better rather than larger in our cities. And that can be anything from CRISPR scientists to Hawaiian practitioners and cultural, experts, to people like you who are helping us in our workplace. And I feel that I have a personal experience, but I don't want to make this about me. But I do understand the fallout of whistleblowing that can happen, which can be very unexpected and overwhelming. And I would say causes a lot of cognitive dissonance for the person experiencing it, because I did watch a recent documentary about whistleblowers, and they were saying that, people who whistleblow, they aren't bad people. They're people who actually believe in doing the right thing and somehow override the response to want to just protect yourself, but to actually do the right thing, even if there are ramifications for that. So thank you for doing what you do. And if you could just let us know more about what you do. And also, I know you have a conference coming up in the fall that we can also, I'll post on the site when it does go live.
Yeah, so no, I appreciate it, Cindie, and it's so nice to meet you, I guess, sort of in person. I don't know if these virtual meetings have overtaken our lives. But so I'm the founder of Whistleblowers of America, and I did that in 2017 after going through sort of my own experience. But I did it because I spent 30 years of my career working with combat veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder and suicide prevention. And when I went through my own whistleblowing experience at the Pentagon regarding suicide prevention money and what I felt was a conflict of interest in spending, I began to have feelings and reactions and started to talk to other people who had also been whistleblowers. And I was hearing very similar language from them as I did with combat veterans. They were saying things like they were in a battle for their lives, they were under attack. I had one woman say she felt professionally gang raped. They're prisoners, they're being held in solitary confinement. They're having to defend themselves. So the language and the betrayals that they were feeling and that they were going through was very reminiscent. And I began to see a lot of commonalities with post-traumatic stress, the alienation, isolation, the depression, the anger, the survivor guilt. Most whistleblowers set out to do the right thing, and nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, "Oh, I think I'll become a whistleblower today." It happens and it evolves, and you think you're doing the right thing. In my case, I thought I was protecting active duty military, protecting the funds that were designated to end suicide. So you start off doing what you think is the right thing. It could be clean air, clean water, wrongful death cases, contamination, contracting fraud, waste and abuse, discrimination and harassment. We've got a number of like FBI agents that have reported discrimination in the ranks, trying to protect other people's careers, and then they're the ones who end up terminated. So it's a mix.
It's a mix. And in my experience, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now is because I can only do what I feel safe doing as a result of whistleblowing. And I was at a Catholic school here in Honolulu, and there was a William Plort. He was in the news because he eventually got caught. But I had voiced concern. Why are you putting this known predator in charge of the 6th grade sailing team? And there was a further conversation in front of other people where I just said, well, this person told me. And at the school, I had been told, no, I hadn't been told. I had been, from the day I got to the school, I had been hearing these stories and people would joke about it and my skin would crawl. And I was like, no, this isn't something to joke about. We
Right.
had professional development things when the big Catholic church scandal happened back in 2005 or so.
Mhm, mhm.
And the culture was, well, we pray for these people. And I was like, we're mandated reporters. That's what mandate means. Okay. So flash forward, I was carrying a lot of the information. In hindsight, I was the person people would come and clear their conscience with. And I'd say, no, you're the first person party. You've got to say this is third person. So by the time I had said my concern, I really felt like everybody's known this has been going on for 30 years. You can't let this person in charge of the 6th grade sailing team. My head rolled.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he had permission, I think, in his mind. Oh, I'm clear. So over the next 2 years, he groomed someone who was 6th grade. And because she was so young, he was eventually caught. But on a national level, I think there was someone from the East Coast who actually was blowing the horn saying, hey, why did this person only get the sentence of a purse snatcher? So meanwhile, he's got his whole life together. He's had a job. But on my side of the things, I lost a lot. And my hair went white like Moses, not quite as beautiful as yours. But it was just like this experience. And it's been 10 years. And I think I can see the contributions that I can make by having these conversations, but the injustice and the fallout is tremendous because my reputation was blackballed as not being sort of cooperative in Hawaiian culture too, where you shouldn't be making a big deal. There's lots of different aspects that go into it. But what I found was there was no recourse for me. Like, I can't go to some place and say I was sexually abused at the school. I wasn't. I just tried to stand up for people who were. So there's places in between where you don't get any help. And then as a whistleblower, like you're saying, you're hearing about PTSD. I've got family members who are like, what's wrong with you? You don't have PTSD. And I'm like, oh yes, I have PTSD. So, thank you for bringing to light and to the fore the human issues that come along with that being like ostracized or outcast because you've done the right thing. And I sleep well at night. So as far as my actions, I don't sleep well as regarding the fallout, but I would do it again because I wouldn't know how to do it a different way.
No, and Cindie, I appreciate what you just said about you sleep at night, because I've had another whistleblower that I've worked really closely with in child welfare as well. And she has said very similar things because she had somebody say to her, well, look, my family has to eat. And she said, yeah, mine has to sleep. I need to be able to sleep at night. I need to be able to look myself in the mirror. And a lot of whistleblowers do what they do because of their sense of ethics, their sense of morality. They are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to protect usually somebody else, child welfare, children in school, veterans getting care at the VA, military members under a command, the ethnic, racial, sexual minorities who are trying to just make a living for their families as well. And when you speak truth to power and you come up against very powerful people, you're right. I mean, there's still this very cultural reaction against the whistleblower. The military culture, it was go along and get along. You don't, if you want to be the one promoted and get ahead, you don't make trouble. Because if you do, they label you as disgruntled, tainted, disruptive. Those are the sort of the monikers, I call them the scarlet letters, that people start to wear. And so understanding retaliation and why those tactics are toxic, I think is what's important. So that's why, we created lexicon, we've created taxonomy around this so that people know how to have this discussion, and so that whistleblowers themselves, but their friends, their families, their colleagues, and the general public understand that when somebody is retaliated against, when they're subject to workplace traumatic stress, a hostile work environment, bullying, hazing, gaslighting, mobbing, marginalizing, shunning, those are the tactics. So some of the tactics we talk about, the double binding, the blacklisting, the career blocking, we talk about those tactics because they are systematic, they are targeting, and they are harmful. And when you've had your identity disrupted, we call it moral injury in some circles,
Yes.
when you've had your worldview shattered, that's what leads to PTSD, depression, suicidal ideation, substance abuse, and then, it just spirals: divorce, homelessness, unemployability. I mean, all of those things become factors when somebody has become a whistleblower and the retaliation is strong and against them. And these cases can take years to adjudicate, I think you mentioned that as well. This went on for years, and
Yeah.
perpetrators move on. They get great jobs.
I'm not laughing. I'm laughing instead of crying. It's amazing how much more functional and readjusted the perpetrators are. And I've had a lot of time to think about this. I think boundaries, I think ethics and manners and laws and all of these things help us to get along together as a society. And when I think of, as a former educator and someone who does still work with teachers, training them, Yale came out with a study a decade ago saying play is the best way to learn. Okay, why is play the best way to learn? Well, everybody knows the rules. Nobody likes a cheater. If you're cheating, you're out, right? Like there's all these different things. So there's safety. There can be imagination. Well, when I apply that lens to like toxic families or lives or whatever, what I see, and I'm writing about this in an upcoming book, but what I see is that we have moved away from 70 years ago where everybody was like playing by the same playbook. And then we became more individualized and became, I don't know, just maybe after we passed the 80s and we hit our when we started to see the decline in our economy by 2009, right, with the fall of the stocks, and that had a lot to do with unethical behaviors with the loan industries and things like that. Everybody thinking about me individually. I really believe that we need to have some sort of a cultural shift back and an awareness toward when we're just doing what we need to do for ourselves and protecting ourselves. That is a decay to the rest of our cultural society. Like if I'm doing my job correctly as a loan officer, I'm protecting the wellness of the loan industry for everyone going
right
on. Okay.
Yes.
And so when these people, it gets down to boundaries for me. So boundaries and connectivity, because I couldn't find anyone, Jackie. If I could have found you, if I could have found anybody who could have said to me, what you're going through is natural for what you're going through. It would have made a huge difference. But at the same time, I'm glad who I am today, but I wouldn't want anybody else to go through it. So I do believe that what you've created can be a really great resource for people. I'm wondering how they can get to it. I'm wondering just how we can get people more connected, because it is that isolation. And if people were to take the play framework and put that into their businesses and say, you know what, I want people to be more creative and innovative. Well, then you need to set it up like play, because people can play and be more creative and innovative versus, oh, I'm going to get this wrong. Or like at school, I'm going to get this wrong on the test. But if you're teaching in a way that is play based, but smart, you can still learn the same information, but get so much more because the fear is gone. So my question to you is, do you think there's a correlation between, or can you see what I'm trying to explain, the correlation between the shifts in our culture away from we're all playing from the same playbook and this more individualized thing.
So
If you see it, how do we bring that back?
So I think those are age-old questions, right? I mean, it was Aristotle who first opined on what are values, virtues, what's courage, right? I mean, these are ancient Greek conversations. And then even as we look through the centuries, the quitam laws that we have today, quitam is, on behalf of the king. You bring a claim or a suit. Those are modern. That's modern law today. The False Claims Act in the United States was because of fraud being perpetrated during the Civil War and people selling sawdust instead of gunpowder and infected blankets to the Union Army. We have a First Amendment in this country because of Revolutionary War sailors who said to Congress, hey, we've got a commander who's treating the British prisoners poorly, and they wanted justice for these British prisoners, and they stuck their necks out for that. Sometimes I call whistleblowers the giraffes of the workplace, because we are putting ourselves on the line. We're willingly and purposely sticking our necks out, thinking we're protecting people from harm, when no one else is willing to speak out. And we see a shift in more and more bystanders and more ghosting and cyberbullying. People have found other ways to retreat and harass, and there's always all these new technologies for doing the wrongdoing, where you can kind of be removed from it, and it makes it harder and harder to catch the harm being done. But most whistleblowers are protecting a constituency, a beneficiary, from actual harm. And then you mentioned something about the greater good earlier that made me think, yes, they're protecting shareholders, taxpayers, people who may not know that harm is being perpetrated against them. But if we allow it, if we allow one person to be discriminated against, well, then we're saying our laws about discrimination don't matter. And if we just discount our own rules, our own laws, our own ethics, then we lose out as a society, whether everybody's tuned into the actual whistleblowing case or not. It's pervasive, and it becomes institutional. That's why things like institutional racism exist, is because that go along, get along mentality has allowed it to perpetuate. So, and I think that becomes the hard question, is at what point as an individual do you object? When do you say I dissent and stand up and protect other people from harm? Most whistleblowers aren't acting on their own behalf, they're acting on the behalf of others. Yeah. So I think the questions that you're asking, they are timeless. I think cultures have shifted. I'm hoping that they'll shift again.
I'm hoping we're on the far side of the pendulum and we're about to go back.
Yeah, that would be nice, that we could, I haven't said we have to, and that's why we created the Workplace Promise Institute. We want to train whistleblower protection advocates. Our WPI, our institute, is 10 hours of training so that people can get certified as advocates in the workplace. And then we want to encourage organizational cultures of right doing. We want organizations to take our Workplace Promise pledge and run campaigns and make these commitments to right doing and to encourage continuous process improvement and make whistleblowing part of that. So there are ways to do this right, and I think the answers are out there. I think we just have to engage our employees and our systems and our laws to really focus on it and take the stigma away from whistleblowing and see it as a positive, see it as ethical, see it as patriotic, as your duty as an employee. You said you're mandated earlier. We should all be mandated to report wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love it. Where would somebody find, so as you're describing this, I'm thinking, all right, if I own a business and I've got 150 employees and I have an HR department, I'm thinking that the whistleblower advocate person might be someone who would be a branch or a part of, like, an ombudsman.
Exactly.
So that really is, it would be like with an ombudsman. And for most people might know what that is, but some people may not. So an ombudsman is an impartial person that you can go to with complaints, whether it's at a hospital or wherever it is. So that way you can have an impartial,
Right.
like people can hear you and then
Right.
something can be done with it. So I think that this is great. How long have you been doing this? And I mean, how many advocates have you trained, and how can people find you to do this?
So I appreciate that. Yes. So we've been at this since 2017. And so we've developed started out as very informal network when we launched Whistleblowers of America. I thought it was going to be like a lean-in circle, and me and a dozen other people would talk about our cases. And as soon as we put up a website and I started posting things on LinkedIn, we grew to several hundred people. And now we've started to train WPAs. We just launched that this last year. So we've had about a dozen applicants, and we've gotten a couple of people through the certification process. So we thought, well, we need to make the training very clear and what the requirements are. So in September, September 9th and 10th is our Workplace Promise Institute. Our website again is www.workplacepromiseinstitute.org. People can go on there. We're certainly looking for sponsors to help us keep the peer support services free. So we're looking for conference sponsors, we're looking for people to register, and we're looking for people to become applicants for the WPA program so that we have a network that we can continue to grow, and a profession that I think is emerging. Yes. Right? I think we need people in the workplace that are independent and unbiased and can help us walk through these processes and help organizations keep their cultures on the path of right.
I really like this idea. I believe it sounds to me as though it's like it's a workplace advocacy. But if you think of it as a win-win, then it's good for the business and it's good for the employees. And I think that one way, the minute I think about this, is one way to recognize a toxic work environment might be a work environment that would reject anything like this. Because if they didn't want to have anything like this, then what is there to cover up, you know?
Yeah, very profound.
You know, like know who you're working for. This workshop, it's going to be 3 days.
It's 2 days. It's September 9th and 10th, and we're doing it virtually. Okay. So that it's as accessible as possible to everybody, people all over the world. People in Hawaii, people in England are joining this fold, and we're really excited to see that our message is getting out there, because I think this does resonate for people. They understand that they spend more of their waking hours at home. They spend more of their waking hours at work than at home, and yet how to navigate the things that are outside the scope of your profession is something that I think we need to be able to better support people in that. You know, if you're hired to be a school teacher, you know how to teach and you know the subject matter that you teach. But when you file a whistleblower complaint, you don't know anything about the law. You don't know the difference between level of evidence. I mean, what's the difference between preponderance, clear and convincing, reasonable doubt? How do you make those distinctions as an employee who's not an attorney and not an employment attorney? Because we even have attorneys that have come to us for support, because this is so personal. They've put their career on the line. They've put their family security and stability on the line. I mean, we've had people who have taken their children's college fund and gambled on winning their cases with their children's college money. They've gotten divorced over these issues. They've had to sell a car. They've had to sell a home because they're trying to, one, survive with either less income or no income. They're trying to reinvent their lives. They don't know how to access professional insurance. What kind of financial planning do they need for all of this? I mean, those are all elements and factors that go into preparing and planning your case that people are not experts in. And you shouldn't be. You shouldn't ever need to be an expert in this. but it's good to have somebody who can walk through the process with you. And I compare this a lot to crime victims. The Office of Victims of Crime, OVC, has an ombuds program, and they provide grants and training for advocates to sort of companion up with victims of domestic violence or sexual assault. We don't have that in this population. That the workplace, the white collar crime, really does need an advocate.
I appreciate you. You are definitely a bright spot. Everyone you're working with, I feel like you're bringing something that's necessary. And I hope that this will reach a lot of people. I hope you have a wonderful turnout. Just knowing that you have this, I hope that you'll have little hubs in each different state. And if you need to get one started in Hawaii, I'm happy to like captain one of those. I think it would be a really great thing to participate in, even if it was voluntary.
Yeah, we have other people in Hawaii. We have people, like I said, every state in the union, as well as internationally.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, when this goes out on the video, I'll make sure that your website, it will be visible on the screen, and there will be, so people can know exactly where to go. There will be a link that they can click in the description. Is there anything else that you'd like to share today while we're wrapping up?
No, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate that, you know, that there are people that are your audience are very much interested in the right doing and having a culture, because everybody deserves a safe place to work. So please join us at the Workplace Wellness Institute, and you can hear more about what we're doing.
Oh, that's great. And then another thing that you mentioned early on, you talked about, some people call it moral injury. And I will also provide links for those listening. I'll provide links on moral injury, because there is a level of trauma you can have some trauma, but then if it's something that it's very difficult for you to wrap it's the cognitive dissonance to really wrap, like, how could this happen? I was doing right, and then how did this happen? It's a different level. And so anyone who's seeking help for that, there's a lot of great resources. But if the moral injury is a definite aspect of the whistleblowing. Yes. That soul bruise. But I can say, though, if you can keep walking and if you can keep getting up, you do get to the other side, and there is good that can come from it. And so thank you for bringing good out of dark places.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Jackie, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And everyone out there, thank you for listening to EcoVentures. If you're interested in more, hit subscribe. If you want to just hear us on audio, go to iHeart, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hui ho.